We're moving on now to the largest marsupial carnivore alive in Australia today, and frankly, you're already pretty well familiar with him, but for reasons which may seem a little odd.
What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc? What's up? What's up, Doc? What's cooking?
The Tasmanian devil's on the loose! Run! Run! Run for your life!
I don't even know what a Tasmanian devil is. Huh. I better find out more about him. Q-U-E-S-T. Tasmanian. Here it is. A strong, murderous beast. Jaws as powerful as a steel trap. Has ravenous appetite. Eats tigers, lions, elephants, buffaloes, donkeys, giraffes, octopuses, rhinoceroses, mooses, ducks.
Rabbits.
Rabbits? It doesn't say rabbits here. What's up, Dad?
Ow!
Put me down, you baggy-eyed devil.
Now, some of the things in the cartoon about the Tasmanian devil happen to be actually correct. For example, the Tasmanian devil is a carnivore, and he does have really sharp teeth. He does have very powerful jaws. The devil is just a little bit larger than a very large rabbit, and the little ears that he has up on top, they do tend to turn red when he's agitated. Although the Tasmanian devil is very active, he doesn't spin exactly like a tornado as he does in the cartoons. This is the real thing, and he's a cute little devil. Tasmanian devils do have that wide marsupial gape that we saw with the thylacines. Just as George Harris originally described the Tasmanian tiger, he also described the Tasmanian devil, and the scientific name honors that description. When translated into English, the original scientific name was possum bear, but unfortunately that name had been taken a couple of years earlier by another animal. Devils are usually black with white markings on them, although no two devils are exactly alike, and about 5% of devils are entirely black. They weigh about 18 pounds at maturity, about 2 feet long, and then add 10 more inches for the tail. They live to be about 6 years old or so. So why are they called devils? Well, it's their vocalizations. At night they can scream a great deal at each other, trying to avoid a fight for the most part, because if you sound tough and act tough, you don't have to be tough. The fact is, when there's a real ruckus, those devils can be heard from miles away. Devils are loners. They don't hunt in packs. They don't particularly like each other. And the only time that they get together is for mating. And even then, there's an awful lot of fighting. In short, then, devils are an awful lot like people that you probably know. These two devils are baby devils, and it's easy to tell their age because all devils are born at the same time. And all of the devils that were babies that I saw on my trip, therefore, were 8 months old. These two are having a great time playing with each other. This is not serious. At this time in their lives, it's possible for these devils to climb trees. When they become adults, they'll be a little too heavy for that. Mom is actually able to give birth to 50 to 60 babies, but of those 50 or 60 babies, there's only milk supply for 4. So it's a race then for those babies to the pouch. and only the fastest little baby devils are going to survive. Incidentally, if you want to see Tasmanian devils, there's really only one place that you can see them, even in a zoo, and that's in Australia. They are in Australian zoos, but with one exception, they're not outside of Australia. That one exception is Denmark. It turns out that the bride to the Prince of Denmark happens to be a Tasmanian girl, and the devils given to Denmark were a sort of a wedding present. So they have two devils in Denmark, but outside of that, you have to go to Australia to see these things, even in a zoo. And if you want to see them in the wild, you'll have to go to Tasmania, because that's the only place where they exist. Notice that in addition to the screaming at each other, there's also a certain amount of snorting going on, and that also appears to be part of their communication system. Next, we're going to be looking at devil feet. As you can see, devils happen to be plantigrade like we are. They walk on their entire foot. And this skeleton that you're about ready to see, that shows the same thing, that the devil walks on his entire foot. There is something very unusual about the devil's gait, however. The front paws move independently, right, left, but the hind legs tend to move together. That is, both hind legs push off at the same time. And the result is you get this kind of a strange little devil gallop. Now, this little devil gallop may very well have originated from the fact that they were climbing trees, because their limbs seem to be optimized for climbing, even though they don't do it very much anymore as adults. Well, we're moving on to feeding behavior now, as you can see. These devils are playing nice because they all know each other. But a devil can eat about 50% of its weight in 20 or 30 minutes. That would be a little bit like me eating about 400 quarter pounders in 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah, maybe I can do that. On a pound-for-pound basis, the devil's jaws are extremely powerful. Pound for pound, they're 4 times stronger than your average dog, or about twice as strong as your average wolf. In fact, you can get about as much pressure out of a devil's jaws as a hyena can develop on a pound-for-pound basis. And that makes a certain amount of sense, because devils are basically the trash collectors of Tasmania. They eat not only the meat, but the bones, the fur, and everything else that you can possibly imagine. Devils perform the job of vultures because there aren't any vultures in Tasmania.
They eat the bones too.
You start to hear them crush through the bone now. It's always soft tissue first. They work from the inside out. And now it's heading onto the bone and the fur that you'll hear get crushed up. It's very obvious if you go for a bushwalk. You'll always identify devil droppings. They've got a lot of fur and a lot of bone through them. Actually, echidna quills found in one not long ago. So they will pass pretty much anything through their system. So
Oh, that's a rough passage.
must be.
What are they doing there?
And they are definitely a garbage disposal unit. So
Well, that's good, really. If they're,
it's
the ones in the
a very
wild,
important niche to have.
they don't leave anything there. Well, the kids love gory. Oh, you're
So in the wild, they would tend to be in groups?
Not at all. Not a social animal.
They just would come together when they're eating, or?
Yep. Due to that
What are they feeding it?
sense of smell. Again, devils are solitary. They will have a home range, and devils never show the same pattern 2 nights in a row due to constantly just following their sense of smell. So they're a little bit of a nose on legs, and they're zigzagging constantly in and out. If you're looking at from there on, they have latrine sites where they do come in, do their droppings to say, I've been here, but that's about it. They're not really to say that this is mine.
Are they territorial?
Not at all. No territorial species.
So they just can keep wandering to other
Males may have to disperse within the next few months. You might see more devils due to they're starting to disperse more and more to establish themselves in an area where there's more females around. So breeding season then starts, behaviours start anywhere from December onwards, but February, March is breeding season, and this is where young devils now, within the next couple of weeks, well, a couple of months, no, not even a couple of months, December, young devils start to disperse and become solitary animals. So you may see some young devils out and about. Again, this time of year though, becomes a big problem. 2,000 to 3,000 devils per year are still killed on our roads.
Yeah.
On top of an 82% decline, this all becomes a big problem for the species.
So do they eat carrion mostly, or will they kill small animals?
Anything really, whatever's there. If there's no carrion, well, they're going to have to hunt. So insects and moths, all the way up to wombats or wallabies or so on. Birds, eggs, everything comes in handy for the
They
devil.
won't hunt in pack like
Not at all.
together.
Not at all. No social structure like a pack animal. There's no hierarchy. There's no alpha male or alpha female. It's who's hungrier than the other. It changes every day.
The foxes here.
Within the last 10 to 12 years, there is enough evidence to prove that we do have the European red fox. No quarantining the boats 10 to 12 years ago. You've got the highest density of red fox in Port Melbourne, and this is where there's just too much scientific evidence to prove that there are foxes now. Hopefully only a small population, and we will hopefully try and eradicate the species before they pop up, but no one's ever been able to successfully eradicate the European red fox. So that is the biggest problem today. The fox is here.
Because they weren't here.
Well, there's not enough. The last 182 years, we believe, 180,000 devils. They can head down a wombat burrow, they can head down a fox den, keep Tasmania fox free, but now that they are in danger due to disease, we believe over 200 sightings last year of the fox. But again, you are looking at, we can get devil numbers up, we can prevent the fox from establishing.
Oh, breakaway! It's a breakaway!
Now, these three are some old males. You can tell because they've lost most of the fur on their tails. Now, that's not something that happens naturally and normally just with the passage of time. No, actually, there's a cause for it. You see, what happens is when the males and the females are breeding, the female goes down into his burrow, they breed, and then he keeps her from getting out of the burrow for 21 days. He does that to make sure that all of the babies are his. Otherwise, if she gets out, she'll breed with other males, and some of those babies might not be his. Well, while he's blocking the burrow with his rump, she's tearing him up from the other side, and he's got to keep her in there for 21 days to guarantee the babies are all going to be his. And that's why he's lost all that hair on the end of his tail. In Tasmania, the weather tends to be cool and damp. But even on cool and relatively damp days, devils have a tendency to overheat pretty easily. That's part of the reason why they hunt at night. They prefer those temperatures. But during the day, you can frequently see them in water. As a matter of fact, they've been seen swimming the Arthur River. They can swim a span of at least 150 feet across. So far, these devils that you've seen have all been confined in some way at breeding facilities or zoos or whatever. But now we're going to go out into the wild and see if we can see some. Now, these particular animals happen to be crepuscular, and that means that they come out at dawn and dusk. Sometimes they're referred to as nocturnal, but in the middle of the night they're usually not quite as active. Crepuscular is the better term for it. And we're going out in a wild area along the Arthur Pyman Reserve in northwest Tasmania in order to find an area that's sufficiently isolated so that the devils are likely to come out at night. We'll be able to attract them. Now, going out and looking for devils in the wilderness is probably a lost cause. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to bring the devils to us. So we've got some meat here for the devils to eat, and we're dragging it to the location where we're going to stake it out. And hopefully the devils will pick up the trail. Devil's sense of smell is quite acute. This is Jeff King. Now, this is his property, His family's been in Tasmania since about the 1830s, and this used to be a cattle raising area. But Jeff realized that this was an ideal property for cattle, and he thought he'd use it to kind of do a little private work on devils. Well, the point of all of this is that a lot of people come here. If you see pictures of wild Tasmanian devils, they very likely have been attracted to the site, this particular site that Jeff King has. We're going to be using an old shed, an old cabin that Jeff has built or had built for this particular purpose. It's got a large picture window at one end of the shed, and we're going to be shooting out of that window. Now apparently the devils can't hear us, or they're not interested in the noise that they hear one way or the other, because even if we make slight noises inside the cabin, the devils are usually not going to be concerned about that. Just outside of that window, we've got a light that we'll be able to turn on after the devils start feeding. Once the devils start feeding, the light won't bother them too much, and so we ought to be able to get fairly good photography. Right now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be staking down the meat so that the devils won't be able to carry it off. Now, sure enough, eventually a devil does come. It's a little bit dark. We haven't turned the lights on fully because the devil is at the edge of the light. Now, the fact of the matter is that this devil is not coming forward for some reason. Perhaps he's not hungry. It's raining outside, and it's possible that the sounds of the rain have it a little bit disturbed or a little bit frightened. Now we've got a microphone set up outside, and that's why you're able to hear what's going on as well as see. Now look at that. The devil seems to sense something off to the left. Now devils can hear quite well, and their smell is supreme, but they can't see very well. Mostly what they see is black and white in movement. Nevertheless, there's something off to the left that continuously is bothering this particular devil. It's hard to say exactly what it is, whether it's another devil, whether it's a qual or some other animal, or whether or not it's just the rain and the wind that's disturbing this particular devil. One thing that's clear, though, is that when we make a little bit of noise inside the cabin, the devil doesn't react to that. So it doesn't seem like he's reacting to us at all. Over the course of the years, devil populations have gone up and down repeatedly. Now, shortly after the Tasmanian tiger was extinct, people started worrying about the devil and what was going to happen. And so in 1941, it was declared to be protected. And there was a population explosion of devils. They increased dramatically up until the 1990s. Then in 2009, the devils were declared to be endangered again, this time because of disease. The basic problem may be genetic diversity. Tasmanian devils have very little of it, and the fact of the matter is that one Tasmanian devil is almost a clone of another Tasmanian devil, and that makes disease capable of running through them rather rapidly. The disease in this case is a facial cancer, and as you've seen, devils are very bitey little animals, and when one that's diseased bites another, it tends to inject the cancer cells into the other animal. We know that the disease originated in a female devil in eastern Tasmania. Now it turns out that eastern devils are slightly different from western devils based along that line that you see there. The western devils haven't been hit as hard by the cancer. The disease begins as a small facial cancer, but eventually it grows to the point where the devil can no longer eat. When that happens, the devil dies of starvation. In some densely packed areas, devils have had nearly a 100% mortality rate. The primary hope has been that the devils in the northwest, because they're slightly genetically different, would have some resistance to the disease. And that's where Cedric comes in. Cedric was believed to have a natural immunity to the disease that he could pass on to future generations. But this year he died. He died from the cancer. Right now there are various captive populations of devils that are disease-free, and there are some wild devils that are disease-free as well, and some have been sent out to islands and other locations where it's believed that they're unlikely to pick up the facial cancer. If that fails, devils could be extinct in 20 years, and that means that the largest carnivorous marsupial left will be the quoll. There are several species of quoll, and the quoll are very closely related to devils. Among other things, the quoll has that large gape that we saw with the Tasmanian tiger and with the devil. The primary difference between a devil and a quoll is the size. The problem, of course, is that the quoll doesn't have the strength or capability that the devil has, and so the cleanup effort on the Tasmanian countryside is going to be much more difficult without the devil. It's sad to think that this may very well signal the end of the Tasmanian devil. Whether it does or not, whether the Tasmanian devil survives or not, this is the end of this film.